Great. Well, we'll go ahead and get started because we've got some great presentations for you today, focusing in on school garden summer programming. We got Angela Gray of the Del Norte and Tribal Lands Community Food Council based in Del Norte County, California, and Sandra Cason of West Broad Street YMCA in Savannah, Georgia. You could go to the next slide. We will let's see, we will just share some housekeeping items here. There will be a recording shared via email in our recording library of this webinar. So if you thought it was a great webinar and want to share with your colleagues, you'll be able to do so. Or if you have to jump early, you'll be able to catch the end of the webinar. I'm putting into the chat right now a resource handout. This will have all of the relevant links for the webinar, as well as a link to the slide deck, in case you'd like to see a copy of them afterwards. You can also share that with anyone you'd like, as well as some additional resources that each of our presenters are going to share. This webinar is going to be 75 minutes. We'll have an hour of content, and then the last 15 minutes will be for questions. We'd love to collect your questions as they come up for you throughout the webinar, and we'll be saving them all for the end. So please use the Q&A section of the Zoom to ask your questions. That's the easiest way for us to organize them. There's a little Q&A icon at the bottom of your webinar screen. That way you can save the chat for communicating with each other. And if you have additional resources or things you want to share, we love for these webinars to be a co-creation and a mutual peer-to-peer learning opportunity. So don't hesitate. If you have additional resources, please share them in the chat. We'd also love to receive your feedback. When the webinar closes, a survey will pop up on your screen. We'd love to know what you thought about this webinar and any other future topics you'd like to hear, so that we can make sure we're bringing you the professional development that you would like. Awesome. So if you go on to the next screen, this webinar is a part of a series featuring the School Garden Support Organization Leadership Institute. This is an amazing opportunity that is hosted by Life Lab and Whole Kids Foundation in partnership with the SGSO-Network. It is an annual week-long leadership institute for leaders of school garden support organizations. We define that as being any entity that supports multiple school gardens. So this week-long Leadership Institute is usually in December or January of each year, and allows for about 50 individuals from 25 different organizations to come together, learn from one another on best practices when it comes to running a school garden support organization. So as a part of this, part of the way in which the SGSO network is a partner and is involved with this project, we seek to highlight the amazing leaders coming out of this institute and share them with you all, our greater network, on the things that they do best. So we are hosting a webinar series, about 4 webinars to highlight these leaders. We've got the one here today, and then the next slide will show the upcoming webinars that we have from the other leaders from the Institute. We've got Supporting Transgender and Gender Nonconforming Youth in the Garden on May 22nd. We've got youth internships in the garden focusing on more high school age students, work programs in the garden on June 26th. And then we've got bilingual family engagement on July 31st. You can go to our website and sign up for all of those webinars coming up. And then additionally, if you go to the next slide, we are also doing an open house on May 30th. This will just be a chance to learn all about the SGSO network, but to also do some virtual networking. So we'll be having opportunities for people to get into breakout rooms by region or by role to allow you to do some virtual networking. So check that out and join us on May 30th. So next, I'd love to get us started with a quick poll. So I'm going to launch this poll to see who here on this webinar has a school garden summer program. Please answer yes, no, or if you're still kind of unsure and that's why you're here, you want to get some tips and tricks and you might start one, you can select that as your last, option or as your answer. So I'm going to give folks just a couple more seconds to answer the poll. Thanks so much for letting us know who's in the room. And just to share with everybody, it looks like we're a little bit evenly split. So 40% of you do have a summer program, 33% do not, and 28% might start one. Well, I hope this will be relevant and supportive to you regardless of where you are in having a summer program. So now I'm going to pass it off to our amazing presenters. First, we're going to start with Angela Gray from the Del Norte and Tribal Lands Community Food Council. Thanks, Angela.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much for the invitation to share. I am feeling a little bit nervous, which is funny for me because I do enjoy public speaking. I know most people don't, but yeah, I guess I'm feeling a little nervous today because I'm sharing with my peers. But I'll just tell myself that I'm excited. So yeah, I'm here from the Del Norte and Tribal Lands Community Food Council. We are located in Del Norte County, California. So we're up at the very tippy top of California, about as close to Oregon as you can be and still be in California. So our weather is really coastal and cool, and we're a small rural community. So our summer program was actually created out of a need to address a lack of summer programming in our area. We serve about 30 students a week. Our grade levels are K through 8. We have 5 staff and 1 director. Our structure is hands-on activities, and we serve this program or deliver this program inside of our food forest, which is a really beautiful 2-acre space that we lease from our local college and utilize for the community. And so our camps take place there. Let's go ahead and head to the next slide. So that's my title. I am the Food Forest Program Manager, and this is all about our summer program. Next slide. Food and Farm Camp is the name of our offering, and it's, again, a week-long camp. We run from about 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and we established this in 2019, so we actually launched this during COVID, and because we're fully outdoors for the entire day, so we were able to meet all of the requirements to be able to offer this camp even during those restrictions. Let's see, next slide. So our staffing approach. We have what I like to consider a kind of creative staffing approach. We have our regular staff that help out with camp. So we have 3 staff from the DNATL CFC that are part of this. And then I'm able to hire through some grant funding 1 contract staff that sort of serves as our lead teacher. And then we also are able to work with an existing program called E3. It's a work experience program that exists here in our community. And it's for high school youth to sort of learn these like soft skills about showing up on time, dressing correctly for the job, all of the things that that would be great to know when you're entering the workforce. So this E3 program was developed for high school youth, and we partner with them in order to receive 2 youth camp counselors for our camps. So all in all, we have about 6 people that are helping out with camp. I serve in the director position, so if there's boo-boos or parents need to be called or some behind the scenes organizing needs to happen, that's where I fill in gaps. And then another creative way that we sort of bolster our staffing is that we bring in guest artists. So let's switch to the next slide because it shows some of our guest artists that we've had in the past. We bring in these guests that are sort of passionate people that have maybe something in their lifestyle or in their hobby that we want to highlight for youth. So like we've had beekeepers or mushroom growers, folks like that coming in and sort of sharing what they're passionate about. What it does for the camp is it sort of brings in this little extra boost of excitement to the day for the kids. Hey kids, we've got a special guest coming today. And it helps the kids sort of see themselves in someone in our community and inspire them to maybe, follow in their footsteps. And how we work with these guests is they're volunteers. So they either volunteer their time or we pay them a very small stipend for their time. So usually it's a donation of good faith, time and energy. But we do like to, when we can, get the funding going to say thank you with a little bit of a stipend or something along those lines. And then if we'll go to the next slide, our program structure is also something that really helps us be successful. So on the very first day of the week-long camp, we have the parents bring the kids inside to sign paperwork. And I do this really strategically because I want them to be not just dropping kids off. I want them to come inside the camp and sort of interact with some of the staff and really get that like reassurance. And then we circle up for the beginning of camp. And we do that to sort of set expectations, create those group agreements, and then we create the small groups that we'll be using for the rest of the week to do our hands-on activities. Just on that first day, we do that sort of deeper introduction. And then for the rest of the week, we have sort of a half an hour built into the beginning of each day. That's a getting settled time. So it's time for kids to come in to use their nature journals that we'll create on day one together. They can have some free play. They can greet their friends and socialize. Just a sort of time for us to kind of get together, right? We begin and we end each day with a circle time. In the morning, we use that time to connect and get organized and like give any updates that we might have about the camp. Hey, today Terry's coming to talk to us about soil. And then we use the end of the day circle time as a time to reflect on our highs and lows. We give them a little bit of time for journaling, and then we share out verbally our highs and lows for the days. And then sometimes we'll even share what we think we can improve. We use that to get a pulse of the camp, to know how it's going, how the kids are experiencing it. And that way we can make any tweaks or adjustments as we go along. We also use that for data collection for our funding. We're an entirely grant funded organization. So we need to report to our funders how we're using these funds, and some of these morning and afternoon surveys that we're giving the kids are ways that we can collect that data. Our day-to-day structure, our days consist of 3 activities in the morning and the afternoon. The kids are broken up into small groups and they rotate between the activities. So the staff is teaching the same activity 3 different times to 3 different groups of kids. And then we break up the day in the afternoon with a farm fresh healthy lunch that we cook on site. And some of the activities that we're doing are components of the lunch that we'll be eating later in the day. So sometimes we'll make a side dish together as one of the activities, because food and farm is our overall umbrella. And so any of the activities that we're doing are relating to that theme, food and farm. We also kind of put themes on each day to sort of help us come up with an organization for the activities. So themes we've had in the past are things like soil, mycelium, pollinators, pretty much anything that you're passionate about and want to share, you can turn into a theme for activities. Like herbalism is a passion of mine. And so we spend a whole day learning about herbs, drinking tea, making salves and having lots of fun. The activities are about 40 minutes long, and then we give about 5 minutes for transition in between the activities. We basically blow a whistle. We've prepped the kids with this organization so they know, you hear the whistle, it's time to switch. And then as the director, I'll be helping people find out which group they go to next. That's a big part of my role. What's great about that, though, is that all the kids get to experience each activity. So there's none of that like, oh, I wanted to make a bookmark and I didn't get to do that. Everybody gets to do everything. And we normally have 1, maybe 2 staff presenting each activity. This allows time for staff breaks and some real like fluidity within the camp. One of the things, though, that really sets our structure is that choice is an option. So we are not forcing kids to do activities. If we're presenting something and one of our camp participants doesn't want to do it, free play is always an option. We make sure that we have extra hands on deck so that if there is a couple of kids or one that doesn't want to participate, they have the choice to just roam around. We're in a fully fenced in 2-acre area that only has one entrance and exit. So it's pretty easy for us to hands off approach it and allow that freedom. But I think that that's one of the things that really sets the tone and sets us apart from other camp offerings is that your choice is always respected and supported. Let's move to the next slide and we'll talk about my timeline. This was actually really helpful to come up with right now because I'm in the middle of planning for camp. And so gave me a list of to-dos of what I need to do next. But I start planning for camp right around January. I start sort of looking at the calendar, seeing what the potential dates are. Because we're in a small rural community and there are very few offerings for the kids here, I really want to make sure that I'm not stepping on somebody else's toes and removing an option for a child. I don't want to have my camp planned during another like really fun thing that's happening in the community. So I do a lot of work ahead of time to make sure that we're placing the dates for our camp correctly. Another thing is that we're identifying our potential partners. We love to work with, like I was saying about the volunteers, we love to work with partners. We'd love to have special guests come in for our camps. And so identifying those partners pretty early on allows us the opportunity to contact them and work with them. And so that's the next thing we do in February is that's the time that we connect with those potential partners. We're really fortunate in our area to have 2 really vibrant tribes that are available to work with. And so we love to partner with them as much as possible to make our camp a truly enriching cultural experience. We've hosted a youth group from the Talawa Stewards in the past. They shared a seafood chowder that they had gone to make as part of their learning, and they were learning how to present. So they presented to the youth in our camp. It was really amazing. We've had a Yurok elder that did an acorn mush demonstration, and that was incredible and captivating. And then, oops, I'm losing my mic. Sorry, guys. This year, we're really fortunate that we're partnering with the Yurok Food Sovereignty department to produce a really amazing experience because we're actually bringing our camp to one of the smaller communities here in Klamath. And so we'll be coming out of the food forest and we'll be working on a school site. And so we're really excited. Because I've always produced this camp fully outdoors, we're kind of self-contained. And so we have like a camp cook stove, we have all our materials, and so we're able to kind of bring them over there. But we also partner with public health, with the Smart Workforce Center, with our local school district, with an organizing network called True North. So that really adds to the robust feel of our camp, and it also gets us lots of resources. So partnering is a big part of bringing in additional resources for camp. In March, I start curriculum planning. And I work on creating my flyers. I begin purchasing all the supplies and materials that we'll be needing to produce the activities at camp. In April, I hire that contract teacher and I finalize all the job descriptions for the E3 students that will be joining us. I'm building out Google Forms for our registration. I'm doing more curriculum planning. Still purchasing supplies, you know, and then I also hire a cook that comes in to cook our lunches. In May, we open up registration, and so we invite the community in. I do school and classroom visits to publicize the fact that we're having this amazing camp. We're still working on curriculum. We actually don't finalize all of our curriculum until June, just allowing lots of space for collaboration. And of course, I'm probably purchasing supplies and food, especially right up to the last minute when we launch camp. In May, I'll also be doing a lot of website, radio station, and those kinds of publicities. And then we'll also be making our lunch and snack menu. In June, that's when I get to hire those awesome E3 students. And we close registration about 2 weeks before camp begins to get our ducks in an order, right? Um, I'll send out welcome letters to registered families. And then about a week before camp, I send a what to expect letter for camp. In July, we deliver the camps. In August, we're still delivering camps. This year, we're doing about 4 weeks of camp programming. And then in September, we rest. Haha, no, that's when all the data reporting happens for our funders and our partners. And so that's kind of the timeline for our camp. And then we'll move on to the next slide, where I'll talk about some of the key practices. One of the things I already mentioned is that we have a really flexible approach. Our ability to respond to whatever is emerging through the camp experience and getting that daily feedback from reflection circles, that really allows us to be nimble and to respond directly to the campers' needs. We can make changes as we go. Another thing that we do is we always plan for more than we need. So there's always extra activities in the pipeline. If the kids move too quickly through something that we've planned that we're like, oh, this is definitely going to take at least 30 minutes for them to complete this, cool, engaging activity. Sometimes it's so engaging that they just gobble, gobble, gobble right through it. So we usually like to make sure that we have 1 or 2 extra things in the pipeline that we can pull out at any minute. We allow the kids to sort of come and go from an activity. So sometimes they'll show with their bodies that they're really not engaged. They go off, they run around with some balls and kick and play for a few minutes, and then they come back to the table and they complete the activity. So allowing this like breath and exhale and inhale with the kids. Okay, now they're going to run out. Now they're going to come back. I think is another thing, that exploration, that invitation for freedom. We listen and honor the children as experts on themselves. And I think that really helps them feel a lot of trust in us as their leaders. We have an awareness of the unmet needs in our community, and we really try to utilize our camp as a platform to meet them. So things like access to healthy food, nutrition education, skills for growing food, mindfulness skills, building that comfort with being outdoors for a full day with no screens. Those are some of the unmet needs in our community that we're trying to meet through this offering. I feel really strongly that building community and sort of modeling that with the children is a big foundation of our camp. It's a place where we're fostering social and emotional development. We're learning to be together, we're learning to share space and time, and we're learning to work together. What I've seen as a response to these camps going on my 4th year of leading them is that we're creating these lasting friendships that are happening among the staff, among the parents, among the participants. Many of our camper kids, because we're a small community, I run into them in the community. I see them with their parents, with their friends, and many of the kids have formed friendships that have lasted for multiple years after camp. So it's really heartwarming for me to see that. And then our last slide here is talking about challenges. So funny emoji or GIF, I think that's what that's called. Sorry, not very techie, of the gopher, because that is a challenge. So we are hosting this camp in the food forest, which I am the program manager for, but I also am the site manager. Like, I need to make sure that this food forest doesn't become an overgrown jungle. So balancing delivering these camps with the maintenance of the site is actually one of the challenges that we've kind of had to overcome and find solutions around during the year. So one of the solutions is involving the kids as much as possible with some of the site maintenance, with some creative ideas. Like we have a slug and snail race. Because we live in a coastal climate, it's warm, it's cool, and we have lots of slugs and snails. We do an activity where we go out and we hunt all the slugs and snails we can find. We put them in a bucket, and then the kids choose the ones that they think are the winners. And then we have a race with them. And so the kids have lots of fun doing this slug and snail race, but I also get a whole bunch of slugs and snails collected from the habitat around the garden and removed, because we walk them out into the forest and release them. So some of those challenges we've actually turned into a way to have fun at the food forest. We've had higher attendance than we were expecting. And when that's happened, we've simplified our programming and just built in more free play, kind of taking the pressure off of ourselves. There's times we've had lower attendance than we were expecting. And instead of splitting into those smaller groups, we did all of the activities as one big group. Another challenge that we've faced actually last year when we were getting ready to deliver our camp, our entire community was threatened by a wildfire. Our electrical grid was shut down completely in our entire community, and we were running off of generators. So people were evacuated from their homes, including some of my staff. And what we decided to do was we decided to have camp anyway. We were all feeling, I don't know, a sense of normalization and wanting to support kids. And it was actually our staff that made the decision. Our evacuated staff decided that they wanted to go ahead and produce the camp. And so we did. What we did, though, was we took off all the pressure. We had a really relaxed approach, and we just did the best we could with the time that we had. And we also shortened the day because now everyone was dealing with generators and needing to get ice for their coolers, lack of refrigeration, things like that. So we decided to shorten the camp to give freedom for the adults to have time to take care of those things that needed to be attended to, while also giving a space for the kids to play and engage with each other a little stress-free, because that was a very stressful time for our whole community. We've had weather. We've had 4 seasons in a single day. We've had rain, sunshine, wind, partly cloudy, cold, fog, and we've responded to that the best that we can by keeping our spirits up. And maybe when it's cold, we decide to play a really physical game so that we can warm our bodies up. Or we do a cooking activity so that we have the warmth of the camp stove to keep us going. And then for funding, that's always a challenge. We're trying to keep camp as low cost as possible. This year, we're really blessed that we were able to receive some funding support and allow our camp to be entirely scholarship funded. So we don't have a fee for camp this year. We're in a very low income area, and so that's a really helpful tool. But another way that we sort of address that funding need is we try to keep it cheap. We're using materials from the natural world as much as possible. One of my favorite activities that we produce is build a bird's nest. And you can do that entirely from just looking around you and gathering things from the ground, sticks and twigs and straw and all kinds of things. So it's an entirely free activity, along with my desire to keep ourselves as sustainable as possible and not just get a bunch of plastic junk out into the world. Using materials from the natural world really helps us stay, inexpensive. Awesome. And that's pretty much all I have to share. That's our food and farm camp. I'll pass it back off to Tristana.
Thank you so much, Angela. Now we'll pass it off to Sandra from the West Broad Street YMCA.
Good afternoon. I'm like Angela. I'm like, this is nerve-wracking. I'm Sandra Cason. I am the garden manager for West Broad Street YMCA in Savannah, Georgia. And our summer camp is part of the year-long activities that we do. So we have a child care center on site and we start working with the kids at age 1 through pre-K there. And then we have an after school program. So I see the kids during the school year. And then we start summer camp about 2 weeks after the school year ends. So that would be right around June 1st for us this year. I think it's actually May 28th or 29th. And then we run it up until the end of July. So about 8 weeks. We are located in the poorest area of the city, state, county, nation, median income of less than 16,000 a year. So high poverty rate. We are surrounded by government housing communities. Yeah, we have a lot of all the things that come with poverty come with it. So we see around between 75 and 100 students in our summer camp from age 5, kindergarten through 7th grade. Total staffing is 10, but then that of course, they're broken down by age group. I am the only one that's I'm the garden manager and educator, but a camp counselor is always with the group. We operate the camp from 7 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. I think that's what that says. You can see I only know parts of the camp. And so they come in the morning, they're dropped off, and then I am part of their activity normally because it's so hot in Savannah in the summertime. We try to do our camp activities in the morning if we can. It doesn't always work that way, but that's what we try to gear it before lunch, just because of the heat that's in there. That's his name. This was on. So the biggest thing is how do you integrate our garden into an overall summer camp curriculum? So for our summer camp, one of the big goals is to help students from the schools around us and from the neighborhood not suffer so much learning loss or do the summer slide. So a big focus of the overall camp is we have a part of the morning that's deals with English language arts, writing component, a reading component. They have a math component, and our summer camp counselors are actually certified teachers that come in here. And so they are able to work a lot of times one-on-one with the students. So then what do? It's a lot like integrating a garden into regular curriculum during the school year. And so while the garden is overarching as a part of it, and yes, we grow food, we really tip into all aspects of the curriculum and also a lot into environmental studies and nature play when we're looking at the garden in this case. So that's us. There we go. We subsidize our camp. Oh, sorry. We subsidize our camp, or it's low cost. We have some students that are in it as a part of a federal program. We have we have city funding and county funding for our campers. So low or no cost is what we do. And that's a picture. That's a recent picture. We just flipped the beds out. So one of the things I noticed, I put in my first school garden a long time ago, like 18 years ago. And I worked in some high poverty schools working with the children. But what I learned when you're dealing with children that live in government housing communities that they don't have a playground, they don't have green space, we have a high crime area, not a safe green space. And so you start to kind of tweak, like Angela said, you kind of look at their feedback and what they want to do. And one of the things that they love more than anything is art and that expression of art. So these giant sheets, we have them work together to create a lot of collages depending on what the theme is, or sometimes it's just random and each child goes up. So they collaborate together to create art projects. Art is part of something we do every day, whether it's they're drawing with chalk on the outside of our raised beds, which are wooden, or they're using, and I put it in the resources, these little tempera sticks, paint. It's anything like that. Crayons don't work; they melt. But they're allowed to draw on anything. They even draw on the trees. What can I say? But it's really fun if you give each of them something like that and they go up there. And a lot of the children that are in my summer camp, I'm also teaching during the school year as part of we have a free after school program. So a lot of them I'm used to. And so for me, that's challenging because I can't repeat lessons I've done during the year because they'll let me know they already did that. So I'm constantly sourcing fresh new materials. Some of it I will go over again. The one on the left here is just because how plants grow, because so many people, including adults, don't know, if it grows above the ground, under the ground, or all around. It's one of my pet peeves. So they get to do that one quite often, even though they constantly remind me that they've done that before. And that's an example of up, down, and all around. And then because we look at the total environment and all the things that are out there, we're located on 4.1 acres downtown. So it's a huge green space. We worked with Savannah Tree Foundation. We've done it twice now to have trees planted all around the area of a bunch of different varieties of trees. Some are fruit producing, some are not. And so then we start talking about the importance of bringing the birds into the environment and what that looks like. So they do a lot of projects creating bird feeders and things like that. This is just one. We got a huge donation of rice cakes and a huge donation of peanut butter. So this is, that's what we came up with, is to create something for the birds. And they have a unit on the birds as well. So the camp has overarching themes. We have a library that's located within our YMCA that also has a theme for the summer. Sometimes we're woven into that and sometimes we're not, but usually we'll do a week, like it'll be bug week or pickle week, or because pickle week's just a huge one, flower week, whatever it is. And we kind of go more intensive into that. So one of the things I discovered, and I've only been here 2 years, so one of the things they love to do is they love to just dig in the dirt. And that's regardless of age or anything. They just love to dig in the dirt. So we have a lot of shovels, depending on the age level. It determines which type of shovel or digging tool they use, but we let them dig giant holes, which then they cover up. But we let them do that, and then they can explore the soil structure. And we're mostly sand or sandy loam here. So then I bring in examples of soil from other areas, like red clay from west of here in Georgia. And so then they allow to play with this soil. They can create things. They actually did a picture with throwing mud on paper just to create it. And so it's just, and everything, again, we always have that SAMI soil. That's from NRCS. That's who does soil under USDA. But anything to weave art into the overall lesson of what we're trying to do, which in this case, soil is critically important. Their favorite thing to do happens to be bugs. Bugs are always popular. So if, kind of like what Angela said, if they breeze through some activity you've had planned, a sort of structured activity, then they can always go and roam and look for bugs. So if you looked on my resource guide, I actually use the little condiment cuts with the lids on them. But we can bulk order them, and we do, because they like to collect bugs. And a lot like Angela, we have them get the bad invasive bugs like harlequin bugs that they love. And we let them collect as many of them as they want to, and then they can take them home. And then they're out of my garden, not destroying anything anymore. So it works out best. So but they love to draw bugs. The older children keep journals. They're given a journal the beginning of camp, and they keep it all the way through camp to draw pictures or do whatever, write stories. And just so we do part of it inside. If it's raining, or we try to always be outside, but if it's raining or something like that, we will revert back to indoor activities. And the little boy there is just holding one. where we take old seed catalogs that I get donated and fruit and vegetable grower magazine, stuff like that, and we have them create their own version of a garden. So you're also looking, when you're doing it, that like fine motor skills, they're cutting it out, they're gluing. And this works for all ages too, because they just get more creative as the age groups go through. And there have been times we have hosted other camps outside of our own where we have all ages at one time, and you're trying to figure out the activity that'll work. Well, most of the time an art project will work. These are some of our samples of writing that they do while they're out there. Some of our children just like to sit and write. And again, like what Angela does, we allow children to kind of pick and choose what they're comfortable with or what they feel like they want to do. We have activities out there and we would like for them to do it, but they're not forced to create or do any activity. If we were building the rice cake bird feeders and they wanted to sit on the bench and draw in their journal, that's perfectly fine. Or they wanted to go look for roly-polies, as they love to do, that's perfectly fine too. So we have a big enough area with enough different activities that they can move around freely and do what they want, to do, as long as they behave. So one of the things we always also have in the garden is we have an area for music. So I have drums of different sizes, and I go around. I'm a big thrift store person, so I collect all kind of musical instruments, and those are put outside for the children to use. And that's just one of the stations that they're allowed to go into. And if they feel like making music, then make music. So they're in the first days of camp, they're introduced to these different things. And then after that, it's really up to them what they want to do. We also always have an observation station set up. And that has measuring tapes and rulers, and it has a scale and magnifying glasses and other things. One of the teachers talked about when the kids in elementary school had no concept of measuring anything, didn't know how to use a ruler. So we do a lot with rulers and measuring tapes and talk about, how the circumference or something. And even though that you may be saying something like that to a 5-year-old, just putting that word in front of them. We call it our $5 word. Like, when we're studying about bugs or looking at bugs, we talk about entomologists, and, go ahead and talk about those words and give them to them so that they can, it becomes part of their vocabulary and they're used to hearing it. That again is Sammy soil. On the left is we do a lot of rubbing. So we have a lot of trees and we let them go. They can roam the trees. They can run around the trees. They can pick leaves or whatever and then come back and make the rubbings from them. And that's their art, which is on display all the way through the Y. We have art in our kitchen area. We have art down our hallways, and that stays up year round. So any of the visitors that want to come in and see what the children are doing, it's great to have a visual of everything that goes on. So here's an example of some things we have done when we study flowers. That's a unit. So the little girl on the left has a paper plate. In the center of that is a piece of contact paper that's stuck on it. And then they can go out with a little pair of scissors and they can clip various things in the garden and glue them on there and make their own collage. Well, you can do that with a 5-year-old. You can do that with a 13-year-old. They're a little more elaborate. But all of them love that activity. And then our lunches are a lot of times tied to whatever the theme is. So in the case here, we cut out the fruits for that day and made them in the shapes of flowers to go with the theme. And then as the children get older, you can get more and more details into what are the parts of the flower and get them to study some of that stuff. And with this, we do a lot of scavenger hunts, and those are available pretty readily online. There's a bunch of different versions of them. I have found they run through those rather fast though, so it doesn't really take them very long to find all of that. So it's a kind of a short activity, and but they love to do it. And then we also we have bug week. So we create bugs that we I made up clay that was out of oatmeal. And we've done it out of flour. We've done salt dough. We've done a lot of different things, non-toxic, and had them just go out and create their own version of a bug. I like that one because it reminds me of the grubs that we find a lot. So, so they are always out there. They're allowed. They have to ask before they pick in the main beds, simply because they might pick something that is not ready or something like that. We have about 30 beds in production out there, out in the garden area. And they do need to ask before they eat because they may grab something up. We look for toxic plants. We try not to have anything out there, but we do ask that they ask before they try anything. They are allowed. We don't use any chemicals in the garden. So they are allowed to pick up, kale and eat it, or broccoli and eat it right out there, which is pretty fun. And that has gotten a lot of them to try foods. A lot of our children, I think they go to the food goes to cafeteria to die. So we have a really hard time if I were to pick the broccoli and let it go into our cafeteria and they cooked it and served it. The kids wouldn't eat it as readily as they will eat it sitting right outside in the garden. So just kind of an interesting thing. So here's more of our fun bugs that they absolutely love. There's a resource guide under my resources that talks about this bug coloring book. I use this all the time. One of their favorites is pill bugs because we have thousands of them. So they color a lot of those. We have a lot of snails. We have a lot of harlequin bugs. And if they, again, run through an activity way too fast, then they can always free range and go find bugs, and that will occupy them forever and ever. That's we have a worm farm. It is from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. I'm sorry, I did not put him in my resource thing. So we do have an indoor worm farm in the classroom. They do activities in, and they feed the worms, which is the bottom picture there. But they also go outside, and we have an area we allow things to decompose. So we have a picture there of a pumpkin that completely rotted and a pumpkin that wasn't rotted at all, and they'll study it. And we talk a lot about rot and gross, and they scream when it smells. But we just like to encourage them to understand the full circle of everything. So sometimes we'll take the food from the cafeteria, teach them what can go out, what you would call a compost pile, but ours is just kind of a compost mound, if you will. We don't have like a structure there, but they can put the food there, and that's a lot of times where they go digging and they look for critters of their choice. So, and this summer, we are going to have new, thank you. We're going to have new classes. I like to introduce something new because, again, they don't always want to have the new thing. And we're having this great cicada hatching. I don't know if any of y'all are experiencing this. We haven't here yet, but my sister is. It's really gross. So there's thousands of cicadas everywhere. So I'm really excited since that's going on, and since it's a current event and it's in the news, it's exciting to bring something like that into camp. So we will go out and look for them, look for the shells, to put them underneath the magnifying glasses, have them look some information up online. I don't do a lot with the technology part of it, but I do find, especially with Google Lens, if we find a little critter we're not familiar with, then they're allowed to use my phone and they can look it up, and then they can tell us something about it. Good bug, bad bug, whatever the case may be. So I have finally, it took me forever to give in to integrating a little bit of technology outside. I just feel like they have that too much, but for this case, it serves a good purpose. So anyway, stay tuned. I'm excited to see what we ended up doing with cicadas, and the thing there is out of that same coloring book that I've referenced in the resource guide. And here we are again with bugs. We have lots of bug books. We have made these, we took the fans that you use like from a church or some event, and we cover them with paper, and we did these bug cutouts. And then instead of having a mask or something like that, they just put that over their face and pretend that they're bugs. And we get the bee wings from like Dollar Tree or wherever. We can order them on Amazon, sure. And we have ladybug wings, and we have butterfly wings. So they do a lot of dress up out in the garden. That's a favorite activity for all of them. And then, because I have to come up with something new every year, so this is our newest thing we will be doing this year. Every summer we coordinate with either the Cooperative Extension, and every state has a land grant university that has a cooperative extension. Ours happens to be University of Georgia. And they come in and they will do cooking and nutrition classes. But then we also have partnered with Open Hands out of Atlanta to do cooking classes. And I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I can tell you that they use SNAP-Ed funding to fund these. That's how they fund coming here. It's no charge to us. So if someone wants to figure out how to do that, I think it's cool. So I went to our local farmers market where we had the mushroom man, met with him, and he's going to be donating lion's mane mushrooms for us to grow inside, which are super easy to grow. Mushrooms are easier than just about any other crop we can grow. So we'll be growing those inside, and then starting right at the beginning of camp, so that by the time we do our cooking classes, we will have studied the mushroom, the life cycle of mushrooms, looked at all the parts of the mushrooms. And again, it depends, you're going to do something maybe a little bit different for the 5-year-olds than you do for the 13-year-olds. They can probably, more advanced content. And when I was in California, SGSO, I picked up some new books about fungi. So I'm really excited about that. So anyway, we will grow the mushrooms, and then they're going to make the lion's mane crab cakes out of them. So this will be our first adventure into mushroom growing, and we're like super excited about that. And partnerships, I probably have left out, I don't know how many people. But that's really the key to everything that we do. We couldn't do or fund all of our activities without, we have grants that we've gotten in the past. We have ongoing relationships with the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, Economic Opportunity Authority next door, Savannah State. Some like the Seabees just came and built a bed, and that was just because of Navy Week here. And we have regular funding for the garden through Gulfstream and the city of Savannah and Chatham County. And so that's what pays me. I'm a part-time garden manager, and that's what funds the program. And my part of it, I'm woven into the child care portion, the after school, the summer camp, and I also teach for our senior program. So I'm woven into all of those different grants, depending on what is what. So with that, I think that's it. I think I'm good.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sandra. And thank you, Angela, for all of this amazing content that you've shared on how you run your summer programs. Well, now we'll pass it off to you all to ask your questions if you have any. Please use the Q&A section of your Zoom screen to ask your questions, and or the chat function. We don't have any yet, but I'll give you all just a moment to formulate any questions you might have for Angela or Sandra on how they run their programs. Or maybe you have questions for each other. What you just learned.
So look what just snuck in my office. That was my interruption. I just got this cool gardening multi-purpose tool.
Oh, that looks very
Isn't
fun.
that,
I
isn't
love
that
that.
fun? Anyway, yeah. The one that did my presentation she just ordered that for me. So cool.
Nice. All right, so it looks like we got a question. How do you train staff to all be on board, organized, and in sync for your program?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, for me, it really starts during the hiring process. So, and I've been so blessed every year. It's sort of come to me through a very organic process who my contract hire will be. But really, the thing I'm hiring for the most is good fit. I mean, we're going to be together all day. We're going to be doing weird stuff and having fun. And so we really just need to vibe with each other. There needs to be that enjoyment, you know, so that there's no, I guess, weird energy that then the kids would pick up on. I've been very blessed that I've been able to like work with friends and like people that I really respect in the community. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. And then for myself as the director, really setting the tone, you know, like I'm creating the culture in the camp. I'm creating the tone of what we're delivering. And so just being really aware of myself, I suppose, and like the energy that I'm bringing to the interactions when we're creating camp together.
Awesome. Sandra, do you have any insights about kind of how you train and get staff all on board and organized?
Well, I think for a lot of them, the teacher this is the first year we'll have all certified teachers and not so many young people. For the young people, it was that learning curve that they also weren't used to being outside and working in a garden and what that looks like. So I spent a lot of time individually with them out when the kids aren't there, just so they could ask questions or take a tour or walk around and get familiar with the space. And so, and now with the teachers, and we have all these new school gardens coming in, for it'll sort of be the same thing, just like how I take what you're doing, because again, they have like classroom sort of settings, and how that weaves into what I'm doing and what my expectations are for them to be there. Because mainly I'm doing the teaching part. They're really there for the support and, you know, for the discipline piece of it, that as long as they handle that, I don't need them to necessarily teach about a worm or a bug or, you know, when something's ready or how to grow something. But it is important that they understand I need them there to do that part of it, to watch what's going on with all the kids while I'm actually teaching the lesson.
Great, thank you both. We've gotten a couple questions about funding. You both seem to have, you know, lots of great funding. Do you have any funding or grants you recommend, or, you know, how did you get started on getting the funding that you have for your program? How would you suggest someone else get started?
Write a grant.
Yeah.
That's what we did because we wanted to keep this program alive. So we launched this without any funding, actually, that was specifically for this program. And then we saw such a need in our community and such an embrace for the program that we decided with our next grant cycle that we would actually write it into our grant, into the work plan. So yeah, I'm glad it seems like we have a lot of money, but we've been piecing it together from day one, actually. And that is one of the things I'm proud of, though, is our sort of like very thrifty approach to getting things done. You know, I buy a bunch of stuff at the dollar store, and I really try to rely on nature as much as possible outside of those few materials that we need, to, you know, a special tool that we need that we can't do this thing without. But like this year, we're doing a lot of paper mache projects because that's flour and water and newspaper and pretty easy and fun for kids to do. So yeah, messy is really fun. Playing in mud is fun. We've even just done like mud pies. You buy a big stack of cheap, pie tins that are reusable. We wash them and reuse them, even though they're throwaway materials. So yeah, we do a lot of like creative things to make sure that we have a really robust offering, but we're doing it on the cheap.
I would agree with that too. And we just did, we do tin cans, we plant tin cans, we do a lot of that stuff. The problem I'm seeing is, and it's not just for a school garden or a community garden or whatever, is that they fund things, but they don't fund people. A lot of the grants are very restrictive and they don't, and we're kind of trying to advocate for a change in that because if you don't fund the people, the things will come, like, sticks, or I use cotton balls. I use like, bulk items, and you can do a lot of things with that. That I don't need all the things, but I do need to be able to fund the personnel. And that's the hardest piece to actually get funded. I know. So when you're looking at how you're going to fund it, lean into environmental studies and lean into social emotional development, which is huge right now. So that's where you're seeing your grant money come in. You're not going to see it. You're not going to see a farm to summer camp grant. That's probably not out there. And there are garden grants, but those are usually very small amounts, and the paperwork side of them tends to be pretty intense. So, but a lot of major corporations and foundations, because of their social responsibility requirement as part of being on Wall Street, now have to have certain social responsibility things that they're looking at. And the environment is definitely one of them. Social, emotional development, mental health, which anytime you're outside, there's tons of studies. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's tons of information about how good that is for you. And then literacy now is huge. I know for ours, it's our literacy rate is horrible. So if you can take the literacy component and put that in your garden and talk about how you use your books inside of what you're doing outside, that you're reading whatever the book is, reading about bugs, or you're doing the alphabet through bugs, or whatever it is, you're just taking a different approach to literacy and pushing it outside, then you open up to even more grant funding.
And I want to piggyback too on something that you shared, Sandra, and something I shared. Partnerships. That's another way to fund your camps and kind of take some of the funding responsibility off of your organization. We work with public health. They bring in a smoothie bike. They pay for all the materials and their staff to come into our camp and do that activity. So, you can really like make your camp really amazing by seeking out the partnerships in your area. We have a healthcare foundation here that supports our camp. And so, because it meets their needs and ticks a box for them. So finding out where those areas overlap and where your objectives overlap with another organization can be another way that you can kind of build in that funding. Partnering with that E3 program gives us staffing as well. And so we're supporting youth learning, but then we're also meeting our needs of having staff in our summer camps. So yeah, look for those double wins for you and another organization.
Yeah, because that's our cooking is done through open hands and through cooperative extensions. Very, very similar type thing. And then that takes the pressure off me. I don't have to cook with the kids. Somebody else is in there, and I can just say, "Oh, well, you can use what's from the garden or whatever, and layer it in there." Yeah, that helps. And just don't just look at, if depending on what your situation, but if you just have a garden, don't just look at it, well, it's a garden and we grow food and that's it. You got to look at all the other aspects of it. And then that's how you start bringing in like public health and all these other places that really want, well, we're doing nutrition, we're doing this. Yeah. So that brings in the funding piece of it when you can get beyond just, well, we're going to plant a seed and watch it grow. That's what we do at our garden camp. You do much more than that, even if you hadn't sat down to think about all the things that you actually do when you're outside with a child.
I love it. Thank you for all of those various examples, everything from being thrifty to going into other avenues you might not otherwise connect gardens to that have a lot of funding, like environment and literacy, to partnerships. That's all really great. And I also, for this question and all questions, I welcome anyone who's on our webinar. If you also have additional ideas or resources for funding or any of the other questions we've asked, please share them in the chat. It'd be great to see. To that point, do you have any fun, quick examples that you use to kind of re-engage students if they're starting to get antsy, especially in the summertime?
If they're antsy on the activity we're doing, I will turn them over and let them go on a bug hunt. That usually takes care of just about either that, or they get to free range in the garden. They get to go out and harvest and eat whatever they want. So that between those two different things, that usually takes care of most of it. And they'll run from place to place, picking and eating whatever it happens to be. Well, no. So.
Yeah, similar for us too. I'll usually send them on a strawberry hunt because we're in a 2-acre garden that has tons of strawberries. So I'll send them out to go forage for some strawberries, or invite them to go and play in the physical activity area. We have a bunch of balls and hoops and all kinds of things. This year I'm getting a bow and arrow set. I might be crazy, but I'm doing it.
You might be.
I think I might be.
We have a mulberry
Thank
tree
you.
in bloom. I mean, in bloom, it's fruiting. So that's the newest thing. Actually, that's what now the adults are coming out. They're going crazy because I said it's been here, but unless you point it out. But anyway, yeah, that's their new thing, to go out and eat off the mulberry tree.
Love it. Free range kids.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, and then I think if they're really like ants in the pants or behavior issues, we have so the perimeter of our fence is all trees. So we'll say run the trees, and they have to run around, go that, and then run all the way around and come back. And that kind of gets the wiggles out. I don't, not so much in summer camp. That's really one I use during the school year, but they love it. They'll run the trees all day long, so.
Awesome. Sandra, we've got a specific question for you. Do you ever combine youth and senior programming so that both populations work together in the garden, given that you've got both at the YMCA?
So we have on Tuesdays, we have our seniors here for programming. And then that program could be anything. It could be yoga, art, knitting, presentation. It could be cooking. We've done cooking classes. But they also have a gardening component to that. So, and on the days that they go out to harvest, then we'll let the little kids go out. They love to go out and harvest with the seniors. And although the seniors, their beds that we have designated for them, they have 3 elevated raised beds. So they're right at that waist level, easy for them to plant and harvest it. But they are also welcome to the beds that are still on the ground. So like last year, we had an abundance of southern peas, Crowder peas, in the black-eyed pea family, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so we happen to grow a traditional one here from Sea Island pea. And so they were out there, and the kids were out there. So the seniors would have their buckets, and the little kids would go around and they would fill the bucket with the peas for the seniors. So, and also, so if we have pickle week, which is how, so we grow we have cucumbers, we'll plant cucumbers, and then they eat cucumbers, and then we learn how you go from a cucumber to a pickle. When we read the book, I hear a pickle, we go through the 5 senses. Well, the seniors do the same activity. So we have, here, I have one right here. So we create these little pickles and we put them on the wall. And so we start doing this at age 1, but the seniors will also decorate a pickle. And then while our kids are coloring a picture of a pickle, the seniors actually get, nice paint on. They paint a picture of a pickle. And the same with flower week. So if the kids are doing something with flowers, the seniors are going to do that same activity. Whatever week we're celebrating, it's woven into whatever they're doing. So.
I love that. That's amazing.
It's
Especially
fun.
love that the seniors get to do pickles just like the youngest kids.
What?
It's so fun.
Yeah, this is the thing. So when I did the farm to ECE training for our big green kickoff, and all the participants had to do the activity that I do with the kids, but they wanted to leave their pickles on the wall. I just have some to show 1-year-olds can do it. So now I have all these elaborate pickles on my wall. Some have bikinis on them. I mean, like, it's just really funny. Like, the adults get a little creative with these pickles. I don't know, but I said, all right, put them on the wall. I guess I have a whole wall of these pickles one day. I don't know.
That's great. Well, we'll close out with one last question. For staff and volunteers that you bring in, do they need to go through some type of background check or approval process since they work with kids? This person who's asking, their school district requires all volunteers to go through an approval process, TB test, et cetera. So how do you all handle volunteers?
I
So
tend to, sorry, go ahead, Sandra, you go.
So if it's a volunteer that's working directly in the garden, they would have to have some kind of clearance. So we're listed as a approved project through UGA Cooperative Extension Master Gardener Program. Those Master Gardeners are already vetted and go through training every year. I am one, so I know. So they are fine. We already know they're vetted. And anybody else that wanted to directly work with the children would have to, yes, they would have to go through the background check and fingerprinting and all the things.
Yeah, similar here. What I try to do is find volunteers who are either already associated with the school district or work for another organization so that I can avoid having to put that expense on someone. But if they're not affiliated in some way or another, then yes, we would ask for a background check.
Awesome. Well, I think with that, we'll close out our Q&A. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Really appreciate you both just answering questions from our attendees. Once again, the upcoming webinar is in this series where we're highlighting leaders from the SGSO Leadership Institute, our transgender and gender nonconforming youth in the garden on May 22nd, youth internship in the garden June 26th, and bilingual family engagement on July 31st. And then if you could share your feedback with us on the next slide. It'll show our bit.ly as I've also just put it into the chat here. It'd be great to get your feedback on this webinar as well as any future topics that you would like for us to cover in our webinars. And then finally, here is our contact information on the next slide. Thank you so much for joining, being a part of the webinar, asking your questions. You can find us at sgsonetwork.org or on all of the socials at SGSO Network. We really appreciate you joining us. And thanks again to Sandra and Angela for taking the time out of your very busy schedules and events and spring planting to share what you do in the summer so that the rest of us could learn from your experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.
All right.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Great day.